The croissant sounds good. Think if I have any more caffeine, I might explode though. The croissant sounds good.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining again for another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm saying hello in the YouTube chat currently. Be sure to ask questions and suggest topics because we are doing another Q&A episode, but I figure we would, just kind of rant a bit about AI and SEO testing and what we think Google's doing for a little bit, because that's always kind of fun. Let me pop out the YouTube chat so I keep an eye over there. And let's see, let me pull up chat in Zoom. All right. And so, Lee, how is the training program going? You said it was a big one.
Yeah, we've got a nice group in there. It's a fun group. And, they're starting to get some quick results, which is always nice to see. Quick wins always makes people smile. And then, over the next few weeks, we'll get some good, solid long-term gains on the unthinkable keywords that people think are unthinkable. So
yeah, I'm really impressed this time around. You got a lot of big name SEOs in there, people that we've known since the beginning, and it's an impressive group.
It is, and it's a humbling thing, to have some of the big names that are currently there have been through there before as well. But when you can add a few little tips and tricks and things like tools to everybody's toolbox, it's beneficial. It's also, the nice thing about it is people are sharing information with each other. So it's not just what I'm training on. It's, other people have other ideas. I pick up tools and tips from people all the time. So
yeah, I really like your week one because it hits people from left field. They go in with expectations and then they walk away going, what the hell just happened?
Well, with a lot of things in SEO, I mean, we know this as testers, and we talk about this stuff a lot on Fight Club. A lot of times the Google works backwards from how you think it might work. Some of the capabilities you think it has, it doesn't, and some that you wouldn't dream of, it does. And so when you start to show people that, and they're able to go and replicate it for themselves, then it's just a little bit different in that regard. So.
And I know it's 8 weeks on training. You just finished week one. Maybe halfway through, give us an update, kind of let us know how the people in the training are doing, how they're faring.
Yeah, I think tomorrow I'm starting to build on the site that I'm building through there. And I was kind of chatting with some friends this morning. I think that I might initially try to rank pages a lot of different ways. So there may be some random alpha pages on the site that rank for legitimate keywords, at least out of the box and things like that, before I convert it all over to a full clean white hat presentation or seemingly white hat presentation of stuff. So it's going to be fun. You're going to watch me do a lot of crazy stuff just to see what happens, because some of the stuff I don't even know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, I've finally started doing something I haven't done since I left IMG. I've started aggressively testing something in SEO. So I went back and I started retesting everything around the Google time exploit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not prepared to share my results. I promise I will at some point in the future here. Like I will publish and share all my information. all the way down to what URLs I'm even looking at.
Nice.
But the results are shocking, to say the least. Google has probably taken another massive cost-cutting measure for the sake of scalability. And I'm willing to bet that if in the past year, if you're an enterprise caliber website that's kind of bloated, lots of JavaScript frameworks, things like that, and you were hit hard around the helpful content update, or somewhere around then, give or take 2 or 3 months, plus or minus, you are probably impacted by a change Google made. And I'll kind of spoil the secret. They're no longer rendering out to 20 seconds after document ready. That got a lot shorter. And so if you remember, in the old days, they would get to 20 seconds of render time and about 1.2 seconds of JavaScript execution time. Now they're rendering out to about 4 or 5 seconds, and they're doing it in 0.2 seconds of JavaScript execution time. So if you have a bloated site that is kind of sloppily thrown together, you've got issues. And so when Google made this cost-cutting measure, if you're not performance tuning your framework sites, if you have any bloat, anything that's in the way of content rendering, man, that's where your SEO went. So it is unforgiving in the current climate. So if you're out there wondering why your framework site used to be awesome and it went to shit and it can't recover no matter what you do, well, you just got Googled.
Cool. That means that so to translate for people, the speed matters, but it's not speed like people normally talk about it. You're looking at, you need to get rendered in 4 or 5 seconds, which is still above the, what is it, the 3-second benchmark?
Well, it's worse than that now, because now if your JavaScript, not time-wise, so we're not talking about any time-based functions, but just the execution of your JavaScript. If the execution of your JavaScript takes longer than about 0.2 seconds, then the content that is coming out of that JavaScript probably won't be seen by Google. So just keep in mind that you have to be highly performance tuned to get away with JavaScript framework. Sloppy JavaScript framework website development is not going to cut it in today's Google. And so if your rankings went to shit, and that sounds like your website, and everything you've tried has failed since your rankings went to shit, you need to probably invest heavily in performance tuning all of that, because it needs to be A-game coded with Google's current configuration.
So is there a test that I can run if my site's been hit? If my site has been hit, is there a test that I can run to see that it's the Java is rendering too slowly? Go
to the important content functions that put like the product description on the page and throw in a test keyword. Put in JL3964ABRQCF. And then request indexing on that page. And if in the next few days you search for that imaginary test keyword and you can't find it in Google, then Google's not seeing it. So you can absolutely test for this 100% of the time. I noticed Clint looks dour. What are your thoughts, Clint?
Just listening to you talk, it kind of reminds me of the Core Web Vital tests that Lee did and that I did. where we came to the pretty much the conclusion that if your HTML is bloated and that you're adding JavaScript and whatever, but if your code is bloated, Google's going to hit you for it. If your code is clean, they're going to like you and improve your rankings. And it just seems like they, based off of your conclusions from your early testing, it's just kind of like they doubled down on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And they double down on it hard. Like right now, if you're a JavaScript site, man, you're a sacrificial lamb. And this isn't Google propping you up. This is Google tearing you down. So, yeah. And it, to a certain effect, somebody's asking, will WordPress sites have issues? Some will. There are plugins that are built to do things like this. And, you know, there will be a certain amount of this, especially if you're on cheap hosting and you have a shitty server with few resources and you have tons of asynchronous calls going on, AJAX calls, and there are things that can impact it. Now, in Google's defense, it's not all bad news, because they also made another change, which is they switched from their old servers to using the crashed flying saucer from Area 51 to render web pages. So they really do have alien technology in play, and this is also measurable. They can simply count faster than anything you have. So when you like iterate in a loop, most people's modern computers that they bought this morning that are fully maxed out will count to 5 billion in about, you know, a second. All right. Google's going to do that same operation, and it's going to come in at 0 milliseconds. They're going to be about 1,000 times faster than anything you can get. And that's remarkable. That is alien technology fast. And you can actually measure it because you can give Googlebot a loop to iterate over and count how fast they do it. And it is ridiculously fast. And you can also see that in when you test the live URL in Search Console. Search Console has the alien technology. Now, where Googlebot comes in, they will do generally a 4-second render and something approaching 0 milliseconds. What's odd, and I don't fully understand why, the test live URL function will also do it in close to 0 milliseconds, but they'll do a 5-second render when you test live. And I'm not sure why there's a disparity on that. And I'm retesting everything again. So I got these results and I'm like, this is the craziest change I've seen them make in years, because it's so disruptive. And I don't think any of Google's updates are disruptive as this. So I think the lion's share of people saying my website was hit, the lion's share of people saying my website was hit this past year is probably due to this change, gone from 20 seconds after document ready to 4 or 5 seconds after document ready. That would hit all the people I saw that were being hit and couldn't recover, is those types of sites. And so, yeah, if you're still in that trying to figure it out, I would take a look at how fast the JavaScript execution is and the page speed waterfall diagrams. And if those execution times are a half second or longer, I'd look at performance tuning them or making some hard choices about your architecture. So yeah, not great news on that front, but maybe a clue is to a diagnosis for the unexplained SEO losses in the past year.
I don't know that I agree with the not great news piece, because you have at least a plausible theory for why certain sites have fallen when everything else under the sun has failed to diagnose it. So I mean, that's a good thing. I also think Google going from 20 seconds of render time down to 4 or 5 is consistent with what we've talked about with their problems with scale. And so they're just saying, hey, we're just going to trim this down so that we can crawl faster. Plausibly they did warn people that the core web vitals and all of those sort of things are going to matter at some point in time. So now they kind of do a little bit, not in the way that people think, and not to the extent, but it's there. So I look at that as good news. It's more information about how they're what they're doing and what we can do about it.
Yeah, another important thing with regards to the nature of this type of change is it's also heavily punishing people that are inlining scripts and style sheets to get their best first impression page speed test results. You really need to optimize for impressions 2+ under this new system. And what that means is that you will get your worst SEO out of Google on the home page, but then you will hopefully get far more efficient and better performing SEO out of Googlebot on every subsequent request. But if you're inlining everything and not letting Googlebot make use of caching all of those resources, you are going to pay the full price on every page view. And, it's to a point where that might make the difference between, all of your content or only some of your content getting indexed. So I think you also need to look at your practices as to whether or not you tune for the fastest initial impression, or if you tune for your fastest repeat views. And I think in this type of climate, fastest repeat views is probably going to emerge as the best practice, which means all of the WordPress themes out of the gate are built wrong, because they're all built to give you the fastest first impression. And so, yeah, you'll want to look at that closely. Let's see, I have a question here, or several questions here.
Before you move on that, if you're doing your page speed optimization right, your inline and your repeat view speed and all that stuff is already taken care of. So I wouldn't fall down on your sword on that one just yet. But yeah, if you had someone who really just, I mean, they're still out there, people who don't know how to speed up a website. Even devs have problems with it. If they're not looking at both your initial view and then your cache view to make sure that your optimizations are working properly and getting the extra speed out of there that you can, then inherently you have issues alone. So
yeah, and another thing to Clint's point there is you have to figure out the nature of your business and the nature of your traffic. So if you are a lead gen site that predominantly only gets new visitors and never gets repeat visitors, then it's to your advantage to inline everything. But if you are a browse type of site where people explore your whole site and people come back often to explore your site, then you need to look at the repeat performance more carefully than the initial impression. So you do have to use your brain. You do have to think about the nature of your traffic and your business. But if you are the person who is blissfully ignorant and you inline because it's easiest to check the first impression all the time, you're probably fucked. So start thinking instead of just rolling with the the flow of things.
Is that a technical term? Just
Yeah.
just asking.
So yeah, it's important to learn your craft. So if you're in the business of having an online business, you ought to eventually learn these concepts. And if you have stubbornly decided not to learn in your own area of business, well, that's a bad choice. So rethink that choice and start learning. So, will WordPress sites have issues? Some will. Undoubtedly, the worst of them will. Who knows where the line will be drawn? And all of my testing needs to be confirmed and done again, and I'm currently in the middle of doing that. Does JavaScript tracking code need to load in 0.2 seconds? I don't think that those kinds of services are a huge deal because Google's typically not indexing that. My understanding is that goes back to their database and gives you a heat map of how people see the page. And so those services aren't going to be based on Googlebot's render time. So I think things like Hotjar and third-party services like that have all the time they need, as long as they aren't drawing new content on the page for Googlebot to see. There shouldn't be an issue with those.
But could the execution of those JavaScript files slow down the execution of the JavaScript on your page? Because
yes, but the other thing to keep in mind is you never want to take testing products like that and leave them running 100% of the time year round. You go in, you do a study, you get the information you need, and then you turn it off. If you are doing 100% analysis all the time, that will impact performance, especially if you stack a lot of those services. If you've got Optimizely and Hotjar in there and you got 37 other things in your tag manager, yeah, you most definitely have a problem. And odds are, if you're in that boat, you probably don't even know half the shit that's in your tag manager and what it does and what the impact will be when you turn it off. You probably haven't documented it. And if you're in a large organization, you might not even know who the stakeholders are for that little snippet in Tag Manager. So who do you talk to about it? Are they even still with the company? Was it an outside consultant that put it there? And when you go and look at the accounts in your Tag Manager, who is Shiny Rainbow Unicorn 32 at gmail.com? Because I'm sure you didn't use the corporate emails, so you have no idea who the identity of the people are that have access to these systems. So you probably have multiple layers of problems if you have any of these problems. And so, yeah, an audit might be in order at some point.
And just to add to that, having Tag Manager alone on your website will drop your scores in Core Web Vitals by 20 points at least. Just having that JavaScript from Tag Manager on there. So, I mean, doing the audit, like Ted said, is just smart anyway. Now you just have another reason to justify keeping those lists down.
And document them, man. Tag Manager supports comments. Put in the name of the stakeholder who's responsible for it. Put in a description of what this thing does and why it's needed for the business. Write down any warnings for any impact it'll have on other systems if it's removed. Document your shit. Don't just paste it in Tag Manager and forget about it, because that's how you get into these terrible messes. And definitely, if you're going to have people in your Google properties, man, I recommend you just make a temporary company account for them, give it a naming convention so it's an outside consultant. Please use this email when you log into our systems. And that way you have degrees of separation. So when that third party SEO clicks on its own AdSense ads, that it doesn't get you ejected by association. So if you create a clean account for them to access your systems and to do their work, then their personal behavior shouldn't affect your company. And when I was in ecom, man, the penalty for that mistake happening, it was a 10-year ban from AdSense because an outsider clicked his own ads and was associated with the company account. And Google is unforgiving of that, even when you're a PageRank 8 website spending millions in ad spend. So just note that if you fall in that pit, it's hard to get out. All right, so let's see. We had a few questions in here already. That's the Hotjar one. I'm glad I optimized my websites then. Previously only did it for user experience. Yeah, it's good to keep up with it. How do you go about registering hundreds of domains on Google Search Console that interlinks? You don't want Google to know that they're owned by the same. There's nothing wrong with them being owned by the same person. You're allowed to own hundreds of domains. The online retailer I worked for had about 6,000 domains. A lot of them dated back to the 90s and were never even used for anything. And so I'd pull out these ancient domains that were doing nothing and I'd test them, because they were old and everyone was saying old domains are valuable. And it turns out they're not. When you have old domains from the 90s that were never used as a website, they perform exactly the same as a new domain you register today. It's only when the domains were used as a website in the 90s, then they have this aged value. But don't just assume that an aged domain name has value. You need to make sure there is an aged website on that aged domain name. But there's no problem with having hundreds of domains in Search Console and having hundreds of websites. Viacom has thousands of websites, big ones. They have Nickelodeon and BET and MTV and all your cable channels and websites for all the programs on all the cable channels and all of their contest websites and all of their little promotional web. There is nothing wrong with having hundreds, if not thousands, of websites. There are legitimate businesses that operate that way. And so, yeah, I think whatever you're doing is, even at your scale, is probably not big enough to be scary. What do you think, Clint?
Yeah, I think I don't really have much to add to that. I agree with pretty much everything you said.
Yeah, the only time you'd want to not do it is if you're doing something that you know is going to provoke a legal response. So, weigh that, I guess. But in general, if you're worried that your SEO effort is going to be the issue, I doubt it. The algorithm might not like what you're doing, but odds are no human being at Google will ever be aware of your website. Usually those things are automated and handled. When will it be beneficial to create a website on a subdomain of your own domain, not in a subfolder or a separate domain? Everybody knows that's kind of my hot button. I think subdomain's a terrible mistake. I just think it destroys the value of what you could have had. I'm a big fan of using separate domains. And I don't want to derail the whole show on that, but you eliminate problems like cannibalization, you maximize benefits like cross-linking and referring domains and authority site building. There are synergy aspects. Your network of sites behaves often like your own press release service that you can use at any time you want. The benefits of using separate domains over subdomains are just huge. And I think most people that invest millions going down the subdomain route eventually regret it, and it becomes a do-over, an expensive one that costs time and money. So if you get to the point where you're investing millions in a business that's investing in subdomains, then really do your homework, because I think you're going to regret it. Any thoughts?
In regards to investing millions and then doing subdomains, that could be an issue when you're trying to sell off pieces of your business and you have them attached to a subdomain hooked to your root. So that would be a problem. From a general SEO perspective, a subdomain is considered by Google to be a brand new website. So 0 plus 0 equals 0. So if you have no plan to promote your original domain, you're certainly not going to have a plan to promote your subdomains. And there's plenty of tools and services out there, whether that Meta Publisher, whatever the heck that one is called, that allows people to go in there and drop 40, 50 domains in and create hundreds of subdomains on them and calls it link building. And even most of the active users say that it wasn't for a couple of years that they started seeing results. And even with all those links, they're not getting to, position 1. They're not even getting in the top 5. They're using them to essentially create buffer links. And that goes back to 0 plus 0 equals 0. And if you can't build links to your links, then there's no sense in going for a subdomain route. If you plan on splitting that thing off into its own business, or the potential is there that it could happen, then you don't want to go a subdomain route. But if you have a plan to promote it, or let's say you're putting your blog on there and your main site is some whacked out CMS that has all kinds of stuff, it makes it hard for someone to do the content marketing stuff, and you can throw WordPress on a subdomain blog, then that would be a good application for it. So you just, to Ted's point, just think about why you're doing it, and then the ramifications if something could happen later that you have to address.
Let's see. Does cloud stacking work just because of high domain authority? In a nutshell, there's some sort of aspect about the domain that gives you a better than 0 starting point on those URLs. And so because of that better than 0 starting point, it seems to be somewhat effective. My impression of it is it's good for low competition keywords and may have some benefits with medium competition keywords, but is generally not strong enough for anything, stronger than that. I haven't seen good evidence of it getting high competition keywords. So it's not like it's a game-breaking exploit. It's just another trick at a good start. But by itself, it is not an SEO ranking plan. You probably need to have more than that in the plan to get to where you want to be. Additional thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't seen any tested data on a cloud stack versus a non-cloud stack, which is basically what you would need to see, how, what advantage, if any, there is to a cloud stack. I know there's a lot of people that swear by them, a lot of SEOs swear by them, but I haven't seen any tested data to sort of say, is it the cloud or is it the stack or some combination of the two?
And it goes back to 0 plus 0. Those are brand new pages on websites. Yeah, they might have some kind of magic authority and stuff, but they're still brand new pages. And I've tested them not stacking them, and I've tested them stacking them. And Terry's Power's done all that stuff too. And there's something to be said for using them, but yeah, they're not the end all be all. Let's go buy a $700 month program to do cloud stacks kind of thing at all.
Yeah, there was a point in time where they were amazing because there was like really potent effects from utilizing Amazon's domain authority, whatever part that Google was putting into it, and the things for a short while could rank things really easily. But then that got fixed, like that went mainstream, and the effects of that went sharply down.
Well, they were ranking them. That was the issue. They were ranking them, and then SEO Twitter all cried because their high quality content was getting beat by Amazon S3 buckets. That's essentially why Google was like, all right, we got to do something about this. But yeah, they still move the needle. I've got testing for SIA that I've yet to publish showing that they move the needle a lot. You can get a page from page 2 to page 1 with 10 cloud links.
Yeah. And so there is evidence that they do work, but just note that it's probably not the only thing you need to do. It could be a part of your plan, but it isn't the plan.
And you should never have an only, this is all I do anyway, because one way or another, that only thing is going to get roasted at some point, especially if it's a popular topic.
All right. So Ted, when did that change go into effect, the JavaScript rendering? I honestly, I was asleep at the wheel. I haven't been a good tester since I left IMG. I'm only now getting back into it. So honestly, I was flying blind for a while there. And so things changed while nobody was looking at that part of SEO. That's why SEO needs more testers than just, Ted, Lee, and Clint. Because, eventually life happens and we can't do it for a while, and then shit happens while we're not looking. And if we all had each other's back, somebody else would have been looking.
Yeah, I think the question behind the question is, if you're looking at, oh, my site got hit in December, was that it? Or my site got hit last May, was that it? Or my site got hit the previous November, was that it? It's kind of like the timeline, because if your testing showed that, oh, it just went into effect in October, then it didn't hit my site last May.
It was the change happened at least 6 months ago, if not further back. And that's really all I can say with any amount of confidence. So it's not a recent change. This happened a while ago, and we've all been probably thinking it's something it's not. So we've probably blamed other updates when it's probably related to the performance of your frameworks. Which brings us to the next question. What do you mean by framework website? Well, if you're using lots of JavaScript technologies that use web services to pull content and JavaScript to display that content, that's a framework site. They tend to be casinos and travel sites and online retailers and websites of that nature. They tend to be more enterprise caliber than, plumbers and electricians. So that's what I mean. All right. So how do you find a web developer with top level skills for minimizing bloat? Well, really, you need another developer to ask them performance tuning questions. And the type of, example you'd probably marker board with them is, here's some bad code. How would you make it perform better? And maybe in that code, you make it preloaded with 4 or 5 performance problems that are known, and you kind of see how many they recognize and fix. That's going to be interviewing skills, and you might ask them about their past work and what results they got. And of course, the results are going to be great in an interview. And then you follow it up with what was the biggest problem you had, and what was the performance tuning problem you could never figure out. And you'll probably learn a lot more from their descriptions of where they fail than from their descriptions of how well they succeeded. And so it's good to understand that everybody has limits, and everybody had some problem they couldn't figure out at some point they can talk about. And so, try to fish for those answers, because they'll tell you more about the nature of what they do.
That's a great response coming from a coder. But an average human being who doesn't know code and is looking and interviewing for devs, I ask like basic questions, especially because most of the sites we deal with are in WordPress. Almost all of my sites I deal with are in Oxygen and or Live Canvas. And so when I talk to devs and we're doing page speed optimization stuff, we're looking at 2 things. One is what themes, this is a great teller. What themes do you use or builders do you use to build a website? And if they list off Elementor or Divi, I walk away from them right off the bat because they're really dependent on those builders to the point where they can't code the underlying stuff behind it, right? And then the other one is, have you done anything with PHP and built programmatic SEO? If you find someone that can work with a builder like Oxygen, Frames, Bricks, and do some PHP stuff in the back and do programmatic stuff, they're going to be smart enough to be able to look at the waterfalls from webpagetest.org and find gaps in your optimization. Elementor folks, I haven't found one yet that can do that.
Lee, any thoughts?
No, I'm curious, listening to, because I know in various groups the discussions about which WordPress builder is better, and all these these preferential stuff. In my own experience, which is much more limited on that, I found that Elementor and Divi are a motherfucker to get anything to work right with. So I tend to side with Clint on that one, that I would use that as a screaming red runaway fast flag.
Let's see. The next question is, does hosting on certain hosts, the more expensive ones, give your website an edge? I mean, maybe to a very small amount, but it won't even compare to the quality of the SEO that you do on the pages. That will be the big determining factor. And so I actually studied this somewhat, not in terms of hosts, but in terms of WordPress themes. And I actually collect data on it. And what we found is that if you're not going to do any SEO on the website at all, so talking your grandma's flower shop or your PBNs, if you're a black hat SEO, things you just kind of put out there and forget. If you're not going to do any SEO at all, then your choice of WordPress theme matters a tremendous amount. If you do any SEO at all, it reduces the importance of your WordPress theme down to about 0%. It's all about the quality of the SEO. So it really depends if you plan to SEO or not. And if your answer is to not do SEO, then yes, theme matters. Any thoughts?
I've done the looking at the hosts, and if you got a local website, 10, 15 pages, it gets a couple hundred visitors a month. The shared hosting, cheap hostings, at the end of the day, it's not going to make much of a difference for you. If you got a website that's getting a significant amount of traffic and you're on HostGator, you need to move. And switch to something like a liquid web that can respond better to those traffic loads, and you'll see a SEO or rankings improvement. But if you go from like a liquid web to a SiteGround, comparable servers and stuff, you're not going to see any change.
Now, I'd like to point out that, Clint like is very stealthy, oh, you said technical coder stuff. Yeah. But here he is showing his hand that he knows some shit. All right. So don't fall for it. And yeah, he's totally right. And I would even say that, liquid web for a lot of ventures isn't good enough. Like for SEO Tool Lab, they threatened to shut me down until I put certain resources out on S3. So yeah, if scale ruins everything, and there's a scale that even ruins the things that we suggest. So just note that as you scale, you need better and better solutions. All right, so let's see. All right, is publishing too many pages a bad thing? Well, it kind of depends what's on them, right? If nobody visits them and you spend all of your crawl budget on them and they do nothing, then that would arguably be a bad thing. So it depends how they perform, what they're intended to do, and what's on them and how you did it. And so, yeah, without that data, there's, it can go either way. Does publish frequency depend on site authority? No, I think Google has a strictly governed crawl budget, and frequency is somehow part of that, and how often you change and how desirable your website is to the public is probably governing what you're getting allocated from Google. They're not gonna just give you 2 million page crawls a day for nothing, because that's a heavy investment. So they're gonna want some indication that sending those resources your way is worthwhile. What do you think, Clint?
I think it goes back to, what was it, helpful content, where they created that score. And then you look at the research that Holtzman's done for indexing. And then you look at some of the stuff that I've talked about with backlinking and stuff dropping out of the index because you don't have it. And you look at promotions. So if your content pace outpaces your promotions, you're not going to have backlinks. So now you're relying on Google to rank those pages, index and rank those pages for long tail terms, in hopes that you're going to generate traffic and in hopes that you'll get natural backlinks. Google, to Ted's point about not processing everything, running through everything faster, has finite resources. So if I think, based off of that that score that John Mueller was talking about, that quality score, the overall site quality score, if you're pushing out 200, 300, 400 articles a month, and then Google is knocking out 150, 200 of them because you're not getting backlinks and your internal links isn't in play and you're not getting traffic, that eventually Google's going to be like, I don't care. Oh yeah, they made new content. That's awesome. And then you'll be in Signals Lab crying because you can't get indexed. And always been a firm believer that you should never have a content marketing system that outpaces your promotion system. And it'll just, I mean, you'll get more traffic, you'll be more focused, and two, you're not going to get burnt out. And you're not going to make a junk website that you got to worry about later.
Yep, I think that's great advice. Any thoughts on that, Lee?
Nope, you guys covered it perfectly.
All right.
All my show
let's see.
notes.
Can you advise how I can craft my SERP title? Cora recommends adding 7 words / entities, etc. to the title. Then Google rewrites is badly making it not really click worthy. Well, first and foremost, you want to run volatility and understand is Google like split testing and rewriting, and is that causing volatility issues? Because what you ultimately want is control of what's being presented, because if Google is picking random phrases, like the CRO on that is terrible. And it's kind of a decision type system, so it's not an easy one to work with. You have to experiment until you gain control, and you have to experiment with versions of controlled titles to see which ones perform best for ranking. And then you also have to experiment of the ones that perform for ranking, which ones kind of work from a CRO perspective. And so, yeah, it's not easy. You're going to have to do a lot of experimentation to get to a best title, a best practice for that page. But it all starts with getting control. And when you don't have control, it tends to be a relevancy tuning game. You need your title to be about the content. The reason Google is going to the content is you CRO'd your title. And now Google says, well, your CRO'd title doesn't accurately describe what the page is about. So Google goes to the page to get a representative sample. So now you need a representative title that is more relevant than the phrase Google picked. So you need to create a title that accurately describes the page content and is more relevant than what Google was selecting on page. And that's typically how you gain control. And then you tweak from that title into a better CRO situation. But it's easy to mess up, and it takes a lot of trial and error. Any thoughts? No thoughts. All right. Which things done on inner page affects the entire domain? Keyword cannibalization. Well, here's the thing. Affecting the entire domain happens at a fundamental level while Google is spending crawl budget. So if Google gets into, say, an infinite loop in your socks category, it'll do lots of silliness like, crawl through all your socks in the normal sort order. It'll crawl them all by color. It'll filter them by size, and then go with manufacturer. It'll add and remove socks from the cart, and then it'll say, oh, look at that, we're all out of crawl budget, we'll see you next week. Looks good so far, see you then. And you got 4% of your site index, so that impacts you site wide. And those behaviors, basically you made your add to cart button a hyperlink that Google can crawl, and it shouldn't be. It should be a form that Google would bypass. And so, it's going to be something that you can tune for. Any thoughts on that, guys? Inner page effects that affect the entire domain?
None.
I mean,
Yeah,
you mentioned the keyword cannibalization that'll keep pages from not ranking. Bulk crap content eventually is going to hurt your domain. You can prove that by putting up 100, 100, 300 word articles and then deleting them all, and the rest of your content all of a sudden starts ranking really well. I mean, there's tons you can do.
yeah. Cannibalization is a common one. And it's usually because you're trying to rank your homepage for too many keywords. That's a very common house of cards thing to do, and it locks you into page 2. So just know the end game is you'll rank okay for a lot of amazing keywords, but when you go for the gold on any one, your whole house of cards comes crashing down. So you need to spread out your target keywords. They can't all be the homepage. You'll get your best outcomes when you spread out the keywords, because then you can be aggressive in tuning for any keyword, and you can get top of page 1 for the most number of keywords. And if they're all the homepage, that won't work. All right, so if my sitemap has many child sitemaps, is it better to submit all those in Search Console, or just submitting one main one is enough? Sitemaps always suck. Like every time I submit a sitemap, whether it's a PageRank 8 website or a brand new website, you can count on it taking Google 3 to 6 months to get around to using it. And that just sucks. I don't, I'll publish sitemaps just because maybe there will be diagnostic info and the index rates. And so if I have a sitemap for product pages and a sitemap for category pages and a sitemap for blog posts, then if any one of those has an indexation problem, maybe I'll get some diagnostic data. But other than that use case, I try not to rely on sitemaps to do work because they let me down time and time again. Thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen some buggy stuff with with sitemaps, even properly formed, where the main sitemap will sit there and link to, let's say you have January, February, sitemaps, the way some of them will build it out that way, or pages and posts. And I see sometimes where Google will crawl some of the sub sitemaps, but not others. And it'll be like it'll crawl January, February, but not March, April, but not May, June, July, but not August. And it's like, what the hell? And then they don't go back and recrawl them. So you can see which pages have been missing by which sitemaps haven't been crawled. So, I don't know that their system is doesn't have some bugs or issues in it. So while you need the sitemaps, I wouldn't rely on them as your primary index.
It's kind of like in Google's eyes, the sitemaps are the lowest priority communication channel. They treat it like it's very low priority. And if you feel your pages are more urgent than Google's lowest priority, you might want to reconsider that as your only approach.
It's smart from their perspective too, right? Most users aren't going to use a sitemap. So if you think about it from an engineering thing, I want to limit crawls on pages. I just do it from the crawlability of the website. Can a user get from point A to point B to point C to point Z on the website? And if they need a sitemap to do it, then they're not going to find that page at Z, right? So, I mean, looking at it from that perspective is probably why they wouldn't crawl all of it. Maybe if you just built the site, it's a brand new domain, they want to learn all the pages as quickly as possible, but otherwise rely on the crawl, that would make sense, I would think.
Yeah, I've also gotten to a point where I'm putting HTML sitemaps as well as the XML, because the HTML sitemaps, as soon as you publish something, it's in there, that pings Google. They tend to come crawl that page because it's, constantly pinging them every time you publish something new. And that seems to help to a degree, but it doesn't solve everything.
You put an RSS feed on there too.
Yep.
It's constantly updating.
Okay, we got someone in chat who wants to know about Madge's press releases. All right, Madge. Why do you recommend a press release to the homepage to start for a business? What's the rationale on that?
Hi, Ted. Hi, guys. For brand, you want to make sure you strengthen the brand before you do any inner page linking. So, especially if it's a brand new business or a brand that's never ever done a PR campaign, we always recommend doing it to the brand and doing it to the homepage.
Okay. He's asking about press release campaigns.
Let me throw this one in there because I see this periodically. So Madge, you say that press releases don't work anymore.
Badges don't.
My badges definitely do.
There's a lot of different. There's some bad services out there, some good services out there, but the thing that Google no longer looks at press releases because they're just basically duplicating stuff all over the web, and they're smart enough to know that you wrote them, not you personally, but the company wrote them. I mean, have you seen that in your?
It depends what type of, like you said, there's good and bad PR companies out there. The bad ones, unfortunately, use very cheap inventory from a PR point of view. Like they're sending them out to cheap APIs, which they don't really move the needle and they take forever to index. If you use the premium distribution, that's the inventory that I really would love to have. And that's what I've managed to get in the last 2.5 years. And I'm improving on it. So from a Google perspective, if you're sending it out to premium outlets like your Yahoo, your Business Insider, and AP News and so forth, they will get indexed instantly. You're not waiting around. Within the first 48 hours, you're looking around 150 that are already been indexed at the 350 that we send out to just our premium. So that's within the first 24 to 48 hours. And the thing is right now, Lee, you guys are always recommending my service. I'm not going out there promoting it. And clients are coming back because they've seen results, they've seen movement, and they see the way we do things. Because I don't think like a typical PR company, never have. I've always thought from an SEO point of view of how we can improve a client's business, right? Whether it's a marketing company that's coming to us, whether it's a business owner that's coming to us, I want to put myself in their shoes and give them the right way of doing things. Not just doing a PR campaign and you can add 5 or 6 links and then think the magic bullet, because we're called magic PR, you'll get a magic bullet. It doesn't work like that. You've got to do it in a certain way to move the needle. And a lot of, even marketers, I see they do it as well, where I'm not going to mention no names, but they also add 5 or 6 links inside of PR, which you should never do. You should add less to get more power out at the PR campaign rather than adding more. And it's the authoritative sites that tend to move the needle compared to the cheap PR sites that people go to. So yeah, there's companies that will charge you $50 for a PR campaign. And there's myself where I charge it like premium, but you're getting value for money. That's what I think anyway. So.
All right, there's people asking for discount codes. And so are you open to doing a Black Friday in July?
I will be doing not a Black Friday, but I will be doing a special in May of this year because it'll be 5 years for Magic PR.
Oh,
so
nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. I can't honestly be where these 5 years have gone. But we are expanding. I'm taking the business now to the Middle East very soon. So end of this month. I'm really looking forward to that. But yes, there will be, I'll put in the chat, Ted.
Yeah, please do.
So a coupon code for anyone that comes through you guys can use the 10% discount on any package that they want to purchase.
Yeah, we don't make hang on a second. We don't make any money on this. It's not an affiliate. I'm a customer of Matches, so when I recommend him, I recommend 3 services. It's because his press releases don't tank my money pages. Some press release services can have negative impact. Match's service has always been from a standpoint of quality, like some of the domains you get backlinks from are like Yahoo News and Reuters and you know, there's a lot of sites like that. There's a lot of smaller ones that are like weird, but you know,
you'll get a mixture from the sorry to interrupt, but the premium sites, you'll get your Yahoo's, your AP, your Business Insider, Bloomberg, and so forth. But then you'll get your regional and your local sites as well in the US, which are all part of a premium distribution, right? Which unfortunately, I wish I could pick and choose every single one, but unfortunately, the distributors don't work like that. They have a list and they say, Match, you choose which one you think is best for your clients. And I'm honestly trying to choose the best one for everybody across the board that will make not just a benefit, but also move the needle at the same time.
Yeah. And so the backlink quality of Match's service is really high. So if you have backlink quality problems, like Match is probably the go-to for that. But if you're in the boat of you have a new website and you simply don't have referring domains, well, Match's service is also good for that, but depending upon your keyword, you may need more than one service. And so the nature of the reality in those cases is it's how many referring domains can you address, and most of the quality press release services will get you between like 300 and 700 referring domains. And I believe Match's service is closer to that 700 mark today than it was 2 years ago.
Yes, it'll be closer to 100 soon.
But just note that if you keep using one service and your deficit is large enough, that might not be good enough. You may have to use multiple services. So keep that in mind. So it's good to have 2 or 3 in your pocket, depending upon your needs.
And I hate to say anything nice about Madge, but he has used his own press release service to win some SEO competitions. So for those that think they don't work, just keep that little data point in mind.
And people ultimately ask, what are the other ones I offer? I'll put them in the notes afterwards because I don't want to list competitors right next to Match's answers.
Ted,
it's
honestly,
good to have 2 or 3.
I don't honestly mind, because people should always use other inventory, right? If they can get hold of other inventory, it's always a benefit. I've never looked at my other PR competitors as a competitor. I've always done my own thing, and they should always use somebody else. If they're finding better quality elsewhere, by all means do it. There's no harm in doing that.
Well, of the 3 I use, I think Match has the best backlink quality. But I also use Press Advantage, and I also use 38 Digital Marketing. And I largely do those for the context of, oh no, I need to solve a 500 referring domain deficit or a 1500 referring domain deficit. You know, those 2 problems require you to go from 1 provider to 3 providers to really cover the deficit. And so that's usually the rationale. And then at the point in time I'm doing that type of off-page SEO, I kind of look at what I have access to. And so if I had more Black Friday specials out of Magic PR, I'd have more inventory to work with. So I think you should do quarterly Black Fridays, and you'll probably grow your business quickly.
I will think about it.
Okay.
Yeah,
so I'm working the angle for you people.
No, but the maybe. Go on.
You just ask him directly in May, are you going to run the buy one, get 20 free offer like we discussed?
Lee's waiting for that one.
I'm waiting.
Yeah. Somebody says, do you write your own releases or do you let the service take care of that? If you have no idea what you're doing, let the service take care of that. But in general, I know what I want, and it's usually gonna be on topic, but not SEO optimized. Like, I don't want an SEO optimized press release because I don't want to compete with it. And I don't want to signal to my competitors that they ought to think about having a press release. That would be counterproductive to me. People get mad at press release services when the press releases don't rank in the search results, and you don't want them to. They're duplicate content, and you're doing them for a reason that's off-page related. They're better off out of sight, out of mind, but you do want them to be contextually relevant. You want them to be on topic. You just don't want them to be optimized.
Yeah, the other thing that I would love to say is right now the editorial teams are getting a lot more strict. So they got to be a lot more newsworthy, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, you got to make it relevant. You got to make it contextually perfect for the industry you're in. But you've got to also make sure it's a newsworthy story for the major endpoints to pick it up. If they don't like what they see, they won't publish it. And then you guys will come back to me and say, oh, Madge, you said it'll end up here. But then you've got to remember, we write all the PRs because we know what they're looking for. If you would like to write your own, by all means do it, but we will double check it before we send it out.
And that's a big distinction, if you're going for the backlink quality, like if you're trying to fix a backlink quality problem, then yeah, you're going to have to go more aggressive in the tuning of the PR to get those backlinks. But if you're trying to solve a referring domain deficit, then I don't care about losing Reuters. I don't need that. That's only one domain of 700.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you got to kind of figure out why you're doing it and what you're hoping to get out of it. All right. Thank you, Madge. Let's see. How do you determine an ideal link velocity? Well, here's the thing. People get 50,000 backlinks and their website gets de-indexed. And then they go on Signals Lab and people say that was a stupid thing to do because 50,000 backlinks is a bad number of backlinks. But there are websites out there that get 50,000 backlinks every day, and that's just fine. So if they can do it, why can't you? And as evidence that 50,000 backlinks isn't a bad number of backlinks, I give you all the websites in the world that have more than 50,000 backlinks. That's simply not how it works. It was never about the number. It was always about how you did it.
Yeah, how many backlinks do you think OpenAI got in the 2 weeks after the launch of ChatGPT while that thing was going viral? Everybody was talking about it quickly. And so they probably got, I'm guessing, millions of backlinks, just like they got the, the user base up there as well. So they didn't get de-indexed. It's not the velocity necessarily.
And this is leading up to an MC4 thing. And so MC4 is a web spam algorithm. It says if you exploit a minority of factors, that the algorithm should ignore those factors just for your page. So in essence, when you're on page tuning your URL and you add a bunch of tuning, the algorithm says, I see what you did there, so I'm going to give you some rank improvement. And you're like, cool. You do some more on-page tuning, and the algorithm says, okay, I kind of like where this is going. I'll give you a little more rank improvement. Then you do a whole bunch of on-page tuning, and the algorithm says, hey, wait a second. You're just doing the same thing over and over again. I'm not going to give you any additional tuning for that. That's MC4. And it works with both on-page and off-page. And so in the off-page context, you're like, I'm going to build some links. The algorithm says, I'll give you some rank improvement. Then you're like, woohoo, I'm going to build a lot more links. And the algorithm says, all right, I'll give you a little more rank improvement. Then you're like, I'm going to build 50,000 links. And then boom, your website's gone. That's that MC4 component, not just saying that, no, I'm not going to give you any additional ranking benefit from that. You took it to a point where the algorithm said, you know what, I'm just not going to give you score for backlinks. And then you fall out. And the way the industry responds is, oh, I'm penalized. I'm over optimized. I need to do link removals and disavows, and I need to prune my content, and I need to prune pages from my website. And that's not how you respond to an MC4 demotion. I mean, you can. We all thank you for that because it's the absolute wrong response, and it tanks you as a competitor for us in the website, in the search results. And so you take yourself out in a multi-dimensional way. That's suicide by de-optimization. The real way you respond to an MC4 demotion is you think about that definition. If you exploit a minority of factors, don't exploit a minority of factors. When you use all of the ranking signals, you rank well. When you are a 2 or 3 trick pony and that's all you do, then you hit the wall and you get stuck. So think about all the levers you haven't been pulling and go pull them. It's diversity that gets you out. Thoughts?
Perfect.
All right. What web page builder do you recommend? I use static HTML. How about you guys?
Oxygen.
Yeah, I'll use HTML or just some lightweight WordPress theme. That's it.
Let's see. Sometimes Cora report says increasing size of JavaScript, and there are other things. There are times where Cora will say you need to add load time. Why on earth would you add load time? But you got to think about why things correlate. And the reason why Cora sometimes has recommendations like that, because big skyscraper pages is a winning formula. It gets lots of entities, lots of keyword density. So there is a thing to amount of content being one way of ranking a page. And so when it says you need to add load time, it's usually also saying that you're getting your ass kicked by amount of content because you're up against a bunch of skyscrapers, and those are slow pages to load. So the weird things can correlate. You got to think about why they do or don't correlate and what that might mean. And just because Cora points out that you have a deficit in amount of content, it doesn't mean that you should or have to compete that way. You can beat skyscrapers with small 3,000 word articles by having more aggressive keyword density. Like we do it all the time. You don't have to compete the way they compete. There's more than one way to rank a page. And ultimately, your way of ranking a page and my way of ranking a page is getting reduced down to a highly precise floating point number between 0 and 1. And Google is sorting all of our results. We're being stacked ranked based on that score in descending order. So the components of SEO that are going into your 0 to 1 score need to be more favorable than the components of SEO that they put in their 0 to 1 score. And there's multiple ways of doing that. So when you see Cora say that, oh, your competitors are using a lot more word count than you, you can say, well, I don't want to compete that way. You know, we can revisit that if all else fails, but you don't have to start there. It's not a mandate. It's just what your competitors are doing. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go off on a mini rant on this one. I hate this, love this. When people start off a statement, Cora recommends, I want to strangle them. Because what people don't take into account is that when you run Cora, you set the tuning recommendations that you want Cora to return back to you. So if you set the max, it returns the max of the top 3 or page 1 average, or, a couple of these other things. And so basically what Cora is pulling back to you is based on the tuning methodology that you have selected. It's saying, here's where some measurements where you've fallen short, and here's how much you need to make up to get to that measurement that you have selected, if you choose to do so. It's not that Cora has analyzed Google's algorithm and said, hey, if you execute all of these things exactly in this way, you're going to rank number 1. It doesn't work like that. You have to think. So a classic example is if you're in local, Cora might sit there and say, add 54 more H2s. Well, the reason they're going to say add 54 more H2s is because you've got some directories up there, your Yelps, your Angie's List, and they put all of their content, their people in there in H2s. Whereas your average local site might have 6 or 7 H2s on a page. So in that particular case, you have to use your brain and understand where the recommendation is coming from and decide, am I building a standard page or am I building a directory page? If you're building a directory page, go add the 54 H2s, but you're going to have to use your brain. Cora is not a replacement for your SEO judgment, and it is not omniscient into the workings of the algorithm. These are suggestions that it's making based on the methodology that you have chosen. So no easy buttons. So I hate that when people start with the Cora recommends. I'm like, no, you selected a tuning methodology which returned a measurement deficit. Now decide whether you want to use it or not.
Now, it just so happens that on a lot of mid-level keywords, the roadmap out of the gate will get you some good lift. But if you want to do the best rankings with the least amount of effort, you're going to have to put in some thought. Glenn?
Devil's advocate, Cora technically does recommend changes in the roadmap. so
all right, Butler.
Well, it recommends what Cora is telling you is that to achieve competitive parity in a factor, you need to add this many more based on the competitors you've chosen and the factors that correlated.
Yeah.
And so if you did everything Cora told you to do, all you're doing is tying for first place with those factors.
Right. So they're offering recommendations.
Already
yeah.
So
I know what it does, right?
Yeah. But so, it's not.
But it is
not
offering
my opinion.
It's offering recommendations based off of the data. And
but
what gets people in trouble is what Lee mentioned. It's competition selection and the deficit strategy that you're using. And once you figure those out, you can almost take those recommendations verbatim, apply them, and rank really, really well. I think the users of Cora today are actually at a disservice versus the users of the original Cora. When the original Cora came out, there was no roadmap thing. That kind of came out about after I showed Ted what I was doing and cleaning the tables, because those tables were blown the hell out. And you had to look at this big ass spreadsheet of all this data and figure out for yourself, sort it out. And then you had to go, all right, which one do I do? And when I say that which ones, that's like 1,000 lines in there. You got to go through and figure that out. So it made you a much better SEO. So if you're using Cora now and you got a roadmap, just consider yourself lucky. I won't say I get mad about it, because I've even when I was starting off with Cora, I ran into the same things.
Mhm.
Like, I don't like having Yelp and all those, those directories in my recommendations when I'm doing local pages. Yes, I'm competing against them, but I know I can beat them with backlinks. They're all just ranking because they're Yelps, right?
Hmm.
But when you leave those in there and someone's not used to seeing that, and then they get a recommendation to add 150 addresses, phone numbers, and images, they miss that part as, oh, that's because Yelp is in there, and I had it selected as a competition. So once you figure that stuff out, I mean, most of that stuff will come into be common sense. I can't say that I've ever seen a recommendation for adding more CSS and JavaScript in a report. I'd like to see that one. That'd be pretty interesting.
Find a skyscraper rich keyword, and that's usually where they appear.
Yeah. Or sometimes in the low competition keywords where you have no idea what the hell is going to correlate in those arenas. Those are kind of fun.
And keep in mind that there's more than one way to rank a page. Like, Clint and I could have completely different approaches, and they're going to be, totally valid in terms of ranking, because there isn't one way to do it, And anybody that tells you there's only one way to rank a page, I wouldn't trust them, because there's most definitely many, many ways to rank a page. And the way Yelp is going to rank their page is going to be very different than a way a local law firm is going to rank their page. They're going to use completely different methodologies, and they're both going to be side by side at the top. And you see that with DUI Lawyer Los Angeles, where a local law firm beats a Yelp. There's an example of a local guy who beat the big directory. And so you can go and look at their website and say, how did they do it? And the thing about those examples that they're so great is they show you that little websites can beat big directories. Like, it's actually not hard. We psych ourselves out into thinking that we can't do it. I can't beat a Amazon. I can't beat a Yelp. They have too much authority. Well, they're very deep internal pages that have no backlinks. You could probably beat them with 25 referring domains. So don't psych yourself out. Took me years to get the courage to try, and I felt like a fucking moron for not trying sooner. You will psych yourself out a lot. It's usually you saying things to yourself that stops you. All right. So for a press release, should I only link to one brand or product on the page? I generally link to one thing in a press release. I'm kind of fond to one link, and I think it looks better. I don't know if it is safer or not. Might not have any impact at all. Psychologically, I think it looks better. I think algorithmically it focuses authority. And I like to keep it simple. Like, I don't want anything to stand out as an SEO tactic. I don't want to give people ideas. I don't want something to be a fingerprint for later correction. So if there's a ton of SEO shit being embedded, I think that's kind of unnecessary most of the time. What do you think, Clint?
When I do them, because I'm a cheap bastard, I want to get as many links as possible. So I'll do 3. I do 3 links in there, but I do 3 separate links. One to the homepage under the brand, like Madge said, branding's important. One to the target page, and then maybe one to something else that's just kind of supporting that. That's how I handle it.
All right,
there is an argument for only doing one, because if you're one of the link flow guys that can magically see link juice, then the concept that having one outbound link is better than having 3 because link juice is spread out among them. I mean, then you got that, but I mean, I can't see it. I can't see link juice. Can you see link juice, Ted? I mean, the guy who can figure out how Google is measuring link juice and prove it, that dude's gonna make a lot of money.
Well, you can do it if you have a page rank 8. You can do it with relative measures of building new websites and seeing how they perform. And that's how I used to do it when page rank.
You can say the increase in ranking or ever, but you can't measure how much link juice is going to one domain versus another from a page.
Well, you can say that the ranking effects of one experiment versus the other are like, about 5 times better. Like you can do a relative measure of impact, but you never know the value Google's working with on the other side. But yeah, there are ways to get at your own relative measures, but you have to have a huge website. Can't do it with anything smaller than like a page rank 8 property. But yeah, if you have a page rank 8 and you want to do experimentation like that, let me know. I'll work with you.
So I have I'll split the difference on YouTube. I do 2 links to a page. One, to the target page that I'm trying to optimize using the anchor text I'm trying to optimize for, and usually 1 brand link back to the homepage at the bottom of the press release. And also, to disagree with Ted, I optimize the shit out of my press release. So this shows you just different methodologies.
Optimizing the shit out of it, you make it really relevant, but are you doing like keyword density and trying to make it rank?
I am optimizing it like I'm trying to make it rank, but generally speaking, I know that they won't rank for long. I mean, the very best ones will. Like, I think if you go back to the competition that we talked about that Craig ran, I think Madge's press release and Craig's press releases are still up there at the top of page 1. So they've been around for months now. So those kind of things hold well.
Yeah.
But
See, I don't want it on page 1. See, if a press release for a keyword gets on page 1, it's going to tell all my competitors, hey, I got to do a press release too. So I get worried about that in any sort of in a contest, sure, because you don't have, but I get worried about that. And maybe it's red.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about that. I mean, if you're in the affiliate space and some of these big ass link builders, they're buying posts on essentially news sites without going to the PR service. So where Madge can send out 700, they have this select set of publishers on news sites that are taking money for essentially guest posts, right? And they're ranking for their competition. They're ranking in front of their competition using these keywords, the exact match. So I don't know that would be a justified fear for not optimizing them. But on the flip side of that, I don't know that doing all of that is actually worth all that work, unless you're going to also figure out some from call to action stuff in there to actually take that ranking, turn that traffic into conversions somewhere. Kind of like your philosophy of ranking, why rank 1 domain and you can rank 4, right? So in the PR is just someone else's domain, but it still leads to you. You still have a way to capture the client's email or the conversion or something to that effect. So that's kind of how I would look at it.
Yeah, I think the nice thing here is that it's 3 different ways. We have 3 of us. We have 3 different ways of using press releases, and they all are effective at moving the needle with what we're doing. So.
I think we should end there. We're 35 minutes over. And I know there's a lot of questions we didn't get to, so I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. But we'll pick it up next week. Remember your question if it's super important, and ask it early on next week's show, and we'll try to get to it sooner. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.